To be perfectly honest, I, at the time, had a newborn and a toddler, was struggling with postpartum depression, was completely overrunning this business. And at the end of the day, I was like, I want to get out. I want to change things up. I'm not passionate about what I'm doing anymore. Without going into it, be like, I'll take anything. I want to try and, make money from this. But at the end of the day, my goal was, I want to get out. I'm not going to drag this on forever and ever and ever.
You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Eliza Trendiak, the founder over at Lavoh. Eliza, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're psyched to have you on today. Can you start out with an overview? What is Lavoh?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lavoh is a reusable face cloth that removes all makeup using only water. So it's a direct replacement for disposable products, chemical-based products that most people are using to remove their makeup. I also use it on my kids to take off waterproof sunscreen, face paint, anything they've colored on themselves with. But the primary purpose is to remove makeup.
I love it. And it's such a cool story how you got started. Can you talk to us a little about the hairstyling business you were running before starting Lavoh?
Yeah, so I started out my career as a hairstylist with the dream of always owning my own salon. And in 2015, I opened my first location and poured my blood, sweat, and tears into that. Had never been a manager, had never been a business owner before, and really just kind of figured it out as I went along. And I ended up growing the business and the brand to 4 locations here in Vancouver, BC. And so it kind of became full circle because I was given a sample of a makeup remover cloth about a decade ago while I was still a salon owner. And like a lot of things in the beauty industry, I thought, oh my gosh, okay, another gimmicky product. And I didn't believe that it would work, but I went home and I dreaded taking off my makeup at the end of the day. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. We'll try it. And I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing actually works. This is so much easier. So I became a full supporter of makeup remover face cloths. I told everyone about them. I was like, this thing is so easy to use. It's so much faster. I don't have to buy disposable products anymore. And so that kind of started planting the seed like way back then that it was a product that not many people had heard about. And eventually then when I started thinking about selling my salons and starting a product-based business, I was like, well, this is a product that I'm already passionate about and use every single day. So that's kind of how it came to be.
And can you talk to us a little about the process you went through to sell the salon business? So first, how did you go about finding, let's say, potential buyers to buy the business?
Yeah. So it was definitely a tricky kind of dance because typically like the salon industry, there's a huge rate of turnover. And so I had been lucky enough to build a brand and create a work environment where we didn't have as much turnover as typically seen in the industry. So it was really important to me that I'd be able to find a buyer that could continue the culture of the business. But also, I didn't want word to get out that I was shopping around for an owner because I didn't want suddenly stylists to freak out and jump ship and I suddenly like lose all my staff. Because that's also another interesting thing about the salon industry is like, it's not like a coffee shop where you can just hire another barista. It's like, no, who you have as your stylist, like that is the core of your business because they all have very loyal clientele. So I had to do it kind of very quietly. So I first started by reaching out to my salon beauty reps. So the people that I purchased hair color shampoo from for years and years and years. And I said, hey guys, like this is what I'm thinking of, knowing that they are in all the salons in the city every week. And I said, can you please keep this on the DL? But if you know anyone who's interested, I would love a connection. And thankfully, that's kind of how it came about. It was definitely tricky to kind of keep it under wraps. I had no prior experience selling a business. I had no idea what went into it. I had no idea how expensive it was and how long it takes. But basically, my rep connected me with two different interested buyers. And then I started the process of fumbling my way through figuring out how to sell, all while trying to continue running the business and kind of keep it on the down low that I was in the process of selling.
Amazing. I've always heard that selling your business is more or less the equivalent of taking on like a second full-time job for the time that goes into it.
100%. But you don't know if you're going to get paid at the end.
So talk to us about some of those time commitments. So, let's say it's 20 to 40 hours in a typical week that go to selling your business. I'd assume it was probably a 6 to 12 month span to get the business sold. But talk to us behind the scenes. What were some of the things that went into it that were so time intensive on your end?
So a lot of it kind of came down to cleaning up the books. So I had 4 locations, but actually 3 corporations. Now, looking back in hindsight, that was a mess and a disaster. But the reason why I originally did it that way was when I was starting out, I was thinking, if I ever want to sell one location, it's going to be easier to sell one business at a time, never thinking that I was going to grow it and sell all 4 at once. So basically, it came down to there was a lot of work that needed to be done, just getting all the books up to date. Each salon basically had a different year end. So I had to get everything done to get all the financials in place. And then a lot of it too was negotiating back and forth. And I'm a very open book person. I'm super, super honest. I'm fine sharing things. And it was so hard for me to kind of like hold my cards a little bit close to my chest, because I think a couple of years ago, I probably would have been like, this is my business. Here's everything about it. Do you want to sell? But I really wanted to try and not disclose more than I needed to, so that I still had some like negotiating power. And again, because it started out, I was talking to 2 different buyers. One buyer was interested in 2 locations. The other buyer was interested in 3 locations, but I really wanted one person to take them all. So again, I'm trying to use the information that I have from this buyer and going back and forth and being like, okay, well, this person's interested, this person's interested in this. And yeah, it was just like a lot of emails, a lot of talking with the lawyer, a lot of talking with my accountant, my bookkeeper, basically all the really unfun part of business.
Oh, man. So within that, talk to us a little about the core phases that went into your acquisition, whether it's starting out with like a letter of intent or how you went about approaching the process, if you can even segment it into different phases.
Yeah. So I guess the first phase was just like getting the interest and having meetings with the potential buyers, seeing what their vision was, seeing if it like kind of aligned with the business. Because again, I wanted the business to continue on and thrive without me. My goal had always been to build something larger than myself. Because I said, if you remove me from it and it all crumbles, did I really have a business, or was I just a sole prop with some employees? So for me, I wanted to find a buyer that understood the core values, understood why the business had been able to grow, so they could kind of continue that on. And so it was kind of meeting back and forth to seeing what their vision was. It was kind of like the research phase. And then when we started to get into the actual negotiations, making sure that I had them sign an NDA, because you are sharing the inner workings of your business. And if that information gets out, again, if my staff found out that I was in the process of selling and then a deal falls through, that could have had really negative impact on the business. And then the next part of that, with having brick and mortar locations, was my lease negotiations. Because I didn't own any of the buildings. I was in leases in all of them. So then I had to go to 4 separate landlords and be like, look, I'm in the process of selling. Are you okay if I assign this lease over to a new person? And then each location wanted to do their due diligence on the prospective buyers. And some were like, yep, we trust you. Like, absolutely. If you say that they're good to go and keep running the business, great. One in particular was a bit of a nightmare, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And every back and forth racked up more like legal fees. So having to get these landlords to agree that I can do the sale, but without actually having a sale yet. So it's kind of a little bit of like the chicken before the egg of what happens first. Once we kind of got everyone on board, then we had the letter of intent or the offer letter. And then from there, again, it was the bookkeeping, kind of cleaning up everything and being like, okay, if we close on this date, but this expense rolls over to this, who owes what? And then also knowing that there was going to be a period of time afterwards where there was going to be some stuff that we had to kind of figure out, like, oh, we forgot about this expense, or oh, we paid this and that. And so I thankfully got it down to just one buyer for all 4 locations. So we kind of had this 3-month waiting period afterwards where I waited for my final payment to make sure that all the kind of the loose ends got tied up.
And there's obviously a lot of different ways you can approach this, but how did you go about approaching the valuation side of things? Did you decide on a specific revenue multiple? Did you consult with an outside expert who helped you to come up with a valuation? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so it's tricky for like a service-based business. The revenue multiple formulations vary so widely. Like we're talking, you can use this calculation and get one number, and use this calculation and get numbers that is like hundreds of thousands of dollars different. And I mean, mind you, to be perfectly honest, I, at the time, had a newborn and a toddler, was struggling with postpartum depression, was completely overrunning this business. And at the end of the day, I was like, I want to get out. I want to change things up. I'm not passionate about what I'm doing anymore. So without going into it, be like, I'll take anything. I wanted to try and make money from this. But at the end of the day, my goal was, I want to get out. I'm not going to drag this on forever and ever and ever. So I basically broke it down. I'm trying to remember the exact multiples that I used. I did try to do EBITDA, and then I used a different multiple. But again, it's really hard in the hair salon service-based business because, again, let's say you have 2 stylists quit. That could be $20,000 worth of services that walks out the door with them. So the buyer he's purchased quite a few salons in the past, like businesses. So he kind of had a number that he was used to paying. And I said, okay, well, that's what you've paid for salons that have no branding, no brand loyalty. I'm like, you're buying a 4-location brand with a lot of brand awareness and that kind of social proof. So we kind of went back and forth. I kind of came to a number, he came to a number, and we kind of just like danced back and forth till we met somewhere in the middle. And in the end, I was happy with the number. And mostly I was happy to kind of close that chapter of my life and move on to the next thing. A lot of people in the salon industry as well, when they kind of reach that point where like, this is not what I want to do anymore, inevitably they just do an asset sale. They just close and sell their stock and their furniture and stuff like that. And so for me to be able to like actually sell the corporation was really important to me. I didn't want to just close.
Struggling to get new customers? We're here to help. Hey, this is Pat, the host of Customer Growth Sessions. Our agency, Intergrowth, has been helping e-commerce brands like Bella Bridesmaids, Brevity, and JS Dental to get more customers online since 2016. Interested in seeing how we'd help you? Head over to intergrowth.com/CGS to book a complimentary consultation with me. That's intergrowth.com/CGS. All right, back to the show.
Let's talk about post-sale. So post-sale, you have a little more free time on your hands. How did you end up going about with starting Lavoh from the salon business?
Yeah, so I actually started working on Lavoh about 5 months before I sold. So everyone's, saying to me like, oh my gosh, like you're going to take some time off. You're finally going to get a maternity leave that you haven't had. And in my mind, I'm like, little do you know, I'm already working on the next thing. But I mean, I don't even know where I found the time to do it. Probably like between 11 p.m. and 2 in the morning is when I would kind of do my research, because that's when everyone in my house was finally sleeping. But I knew from just like the years of experience of running a service-based business with brick and mortar locations, what I loved was I knew exactly what I didn't want anymore. I was like, I don't want a service-based business where my revenue is directly tied to the services that my employees are doing. I don't want brick and mortar locations. Vancouver is a really, really tricky city to have brick and mortar in. The city does not make it easy for small businesses, mixed with like the huge increase in vandalism and crime. I was replacing smashed doors and windows every other month. So I was like, I don't want to be tied to location. I also was like, I want a business that's scalable. I don't know if you guys have like a show like this in Sweden, but Dragon's Den is like the Canadian version of the American Shark Tank. And I had been watching that show religiously, and I love just like learning about like scalable businesses. And I once thought that a salon was scalable, like I could just keep opening locations. But at the end of the day, you're so tied to your geographic area. And so basically, I was like, okay, my next business, I want to do product based. I want to be able to start it and do it on my own for a while. I think I was just burnt out of having employees. And I was like, I just want to do something like that is just me, that I have full creative control. I don't need to consult with anyone. I don't need to consider how my decisions are going to affect a whole group of people. So I started the process in the summer of 2023, just reaching out, starting like researching manufacturers, researching materials to see if there was a competitive edge I could get on the type of materials that I use. I started looking into packaging, what type of packaging, shipping, all these kinds of things that I knew would have an effect on the business. And then I started just getting samples of products, just samples, and thinking, oh my gosh, a square face cloth, this is going to be the easiest thing to source and to find. And then quickly realizing that like a lot of thought and process goes into every single little detail. And so, I started looking at the objects around me, whether it's like a mug or a book or whatever it is, and be like, oh my gosh, like months and months and months of thought and process and hard work went into every single product that's in my house. This is crazy. But yeah, I started the sampling. And so by the time I sold, I had already come up with a brand. I had already pretty much nailed down like my packaging, the product, and had done a photo shoot already. And so I was kind of set up so that I could kind of right out the gate of selling. It was just a matter of waiting for my first production run of inventory to start, which took a lot longer than I expected. And then I ended up launching almost exactly a year ago. So a year ago yesterday.
That is amazing. And to me, it was so interesting with the way that you approach the business from the beginning. One of my takeaways from when you and I were talking originally was in-person events have been really it sounds like the primary focal point. I know there's been a lot of PR at play as well, but I want to talk about the in-person events. And I love the way that you described it to me, that 2024, call it, first 6 to 8 months of the business, were really focused on B2C. And then 2025, I know, has taken it more so like a B2B focus.
Yes.
Talk to us about the strategy that you pursued in 2024 with the in-person B2C focus.
Absolutely. Well, I think from never having done a online business before, or a product-based business, I was really so green and naive at how challenging it is to really get any traction online. So I was like, well, what is the best way to A, make sales and get some, money back in my pocket, but B, learn about my customer. So I literally signed up for, like, you name it, I signed up for it. I did night markets, I did trade shows, I did the Calgary Stampede. I think I did Calgary Stampede like a month after I launched, and that is 10 days straight, 12 hours a day of selling. I did craft fairs, farmers markets, the home and garden show, like places where you would not expect a product like mine to be. But it was absolute boot camp in learning my customer, learning my frequently asked questions, and maybe even like facing some insecurities that I had about the product. There's no better way to learn your product inside and out and really like believe to your bones your brand values than by answering people interrogating you about your product and your brand from morning till night. And then also that was a way for me to, one, hone my sales pitch, but two, grow an email list. Because I was like, I'm bootstrapping this myself. I don't have tons of money. for online advertising. And I know that it's so easy to burn cash online advertising if you don't have a strategy, you don't necessarily know what you're doing. So every single market I did a giveaway, but you had to give me your email address to enter the giveaway. So I was able to build like a fairly robust email list pretty quickly just from doing giveaways from the product. So that was kind of another piece of doing the in-person markets of like, okay, if I don't get sales, I at least am getting brand awareness. I'm myself learning, and I'm also building an email list that I can sell to later on.
So it sounds like A, learning about your customers, B, getting way more comfortable answering these frequently asked questions, C, the brand awareness were, if not the top three things, certainly like, things that are forefront of mind when you think of all the benefits you got out of it. And sales, it sounds like, was almost like the supplemental benefit that came as well.
Totally.
Would you say for the majority of these events that you were profitable on the event when you think maybe about commuting costs that went into them, actual, let's say like product costs as well, cost to set up a booth maybe, or was it more so, hey, I'm going to allocate this amount of dollars and it's going to be used primarily to build this email list and learn about my customer base?
Thankfully, at least broke even on every single event. Most events were profitable. I had one trade show where I made $25 less than I spent to be there. And I was like, oh, so close. You have to look at it as like a multi-layer approach. If you're just there for sales, one, you're going to get really discouraged. And two, I just think that's really short-sighted. So obviously you want to make more money when you're standing in the rain, selling a face cloth, like under a tent. It's just, you're like, this isn't fun. I want to make money being here so that I can justify why I'm doing this on my Friday night instead of being at home with my husband and my kids. But yeah, so I would say for the most part, at least broke even on everyone except for maybe one or two where I came up a little bit short. But most of the time it was making me enough money to then pay for my next booth and my next event.
Amazing. Well, 2025 has taken a very different focal point with a lot of the same in-person events, but going after more so like a B2B audience. And yes, I know that it's been really successful so far because we were talking 2 months ago. At the time you were in, I think it was 35 different stores in North America. We chatted for a minute before the show today, and you've more than doubled that number in the past 2 months. So talk to us a little about the B2B in-person events. First, how do you go about finding these B2B in-person events? And talk to us, one question at a time. How do you go about finding these events to go to?
So finding them was just talking to other founders and just being like, what events have you done? Where are you selling? That kind of thing. Because I wish there was like a central database that just listed every show that you could get into. But the only way that I would find out about other shows is doing a show and meeting other vendors. And they'd be like, have you tried this one? I'm like, no, I've never heard of that one. Try that one. You go to that one, you find about 3 more. So really, and that was another piece, even back to the B2C markets, is networking with the other business owners and the other vendors, because especially when you're new to the product-based business, like the other founders and other vendors around me have been a wealth of resources. And that's really how I found out about my very first wholesale show. I didn't really know that wholesale shows were a thing until I spoke to another vendor who's like, why aren't you doing wholesale shows? And I was like, I didn't know that were a thing. So then I just literally just started Googling and just like applied to everything and anything and then figured it out from there.
Tell me if this sounds like you. You've started scaling the business through PPC channels like Facebook, but now it eats up 80% of your marketing budget and ad costs continue to rise, pushing your margins down more and more every month. PPC is great for scaling your business in the early stages. The issue is PPC is like a faucet. As soon as you stop spending money, the sales instantly go away. So rather than paying per customer, we work with brands to build a steady stream of new customers through SEO. Those customers continue to flow for years after brands stop working with us. Interested in hearing more? Reach out to us directly at intergrowth.com/CGS to book a complimentary strategy session with our team.
So as a side note, listeners who are looking for a new business idea, it sounds like a in-person B2C or B2B event database, maybe on a per city basis, could be a really big business opportunity to
Yeah,
go after.
absolutely.
Well, stepping back, talk to us about these like wholesale events. What are you hoping to get out of these events?
Yeah, so my very first one I did in January, it was in Toronto, and I had no idea what to expect. I talked to some other founders who were product-based businesses, but very, very different product from myself. And so they were like, you could do a wholesale show and not open a single account. Sometimes buyers need to see you a couple times before they open an account. So I really went into it with kind of this open mindset of like, okay, this is going to be brand awareness and product awareness because most people haven't heard of this product. And so I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know wholesale lingo. I don't know buyer lingo. The first time a buyer asked me for if I did location protection, I was like, could you tell me what location protection is? And then I can tell you if I do it or not. So I was so nervous, but I was so pleasantly surprised. It really felt like doing a B2C market, but with people that had budgets and were actually there to buy. A lot of times B2C markets, people are kind of annoyed when they want to buy a product because they're like, oh, I was just coming to this market as like a thing to do on a Saturday. I don't actually want to buy. But like within the first 2 days of the wholesale trade show, I was like, this is amazing. These people are here and it's their job to buy. This is so fun to sell to these people. Yeah, I was able to open 14 accounts in that very first show, which I was so excited about, so proud of. And from there, just again, meeting other vendors. All the vendors around me had been doing this show for like 20 plus years. So I was the newbie. And they were so generous with their knowledge and their expertise and just giving me pointers on what works, what doesn't work. Well, my display, I need to simplify this. My line sheet's too confusing, different things like this. And so then I was able to just go into the next one and kind of, again, hone in, be more efficient. And every show I do, I kind of like reevaluate and kind of am chiseling away to kind of get to the best presentation possible.
Let's say someone who's listening is about to go to their first wholesale event. What specific product specs, marketing material, you name it, would you really recommend that they have buttoned up for this first event they're going to go to?
Yeah, well, definitely one is have your wholesale prices listed. So I had all my stuff in like the suggested retail price because that's all I had ever done. And then buyers are coming up and they're like, this is the wholesale price. I'm like, no, this is the retail price. But to figure out the wholesale price is just 50% of this and the margin, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you need to simplify it because you've got like 1 second to grab their attention. If they walk by your table and see a retail price and they think that's the wholesale price, you're going to lose them because they're like, nobody's going to pay that much. So that was one thing. 2, buyers want show deals. They want show specials. They want, which I kind of had to figure out on the fly. You know, they're like, I'm here in person to buy. What is the promotion? What is the benefit for me spending my time and money to come here? They want, to kind of be rewarded for opening orders on the spot. So I again had to whip something up really quick and be like, okay, we're doing free shipping or I'm including this display with it or whatever. And then also to have whatever your ordering system is, like your technology, have that down on point, because there is no worse feeling than trying to open an order and fumbling and being like, and that was me. I thankfully have an amazing tech guy that was on his phone, just like power texting me, and like every issue that I had, I was like, Aaron, this isn't working. I need you to fix this. He's on the back end in Edmonton fixing my stuff. So yeah, definitely, like if it's your very first one, do some trial run throughs. Get your friend or your partner or whatever to pretend that they're a buyer standing over you while you try and put in their information so you can just kind of get the system down, because there were definitely some moments where I was like, oh my gosh, it feels like they've been standing there for 2 hours and I'm still not figuring it out. So just little things like that. But then also to be really, like for me, being super transparent and honest that this was my first wholesale show. I mean, people were so supportive. They loved that I was the founder. They were like, oh my goodness, congratulations. This is amazing. And it just kind of took the pressure off of having to present like I'm this big brand and that I know what I'm doing. Like I was just straight up. And I felt like people actually really responded to that. They were even more excited to support the business because they had met the human being behind it. So don't be afraid to be honest if you don't know what you're doing or if you don't know what a term means.
That's fascinating. Going into this, I would have assumed far better to pretend the opposite. Pretend you're a 50-person company and you just had an off day and you as the founder are coming here because you had some free time. That's so cool to hear that it worked out. It sounds like way better for you to just be transparent and say, yeah, I'm a one-person show. I'm just starting out with this. I'm learning a lot as I go along.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For the successful retail relationships that you've built, have you found that the majority of those relationships really came about like while you were there at the wholesale event? Was that more so just the first touch point and then it was a series of additional touch points before you started making it into their stores?
Yeah. So I would say a lot of them happened at the events, but then a couple things have actually happened since we first spoke in March. Is one, I got picked up by a distributor. So it's actually the very same company that I bought my hair products from for years and years that gave me my first sample. So I reached out to them and said, hey guys, like this is what I'm doing now. I would love to present my brand to you. So I pitched to a room full of people that I've known for years, and they actually discontinued the line that they were carrying, and now they only carry my brand. So now I feel like I have kind of this like sales force of sales reps that are going into salons and spas and selling my product on my behalf, which is incredible because I'm just able to move the needle so much farther and faster than just me reaching out on my own. And I said to them, I was like, if you can, every account that you guys open, can you give me like a weekly or a bi-weekly report so that I can add those retailers and those locations onto my website? Because as a former salon owner, I want to be able to support them and send customers to the places that are selling my products. So that's been a really great partnership. And then I also I now have a dedicated wholesale sales rep. So she's based out of Toronto. She has her own agency. We met at the very first wholesale show I did in Toronto, and she works strictly on a commission basis and is hustling on my behalf. So what I've found has worked really well, just based on my personal strengths, is I love opening accounts. I don't love detailed follow-up, where she is the master of following up and staying super organized and knowing it's been 3 weeks since this person first reached out, or it's been 2 months since this retailer first ordered. I need to send them another email to see if they need to stock up again, that kind of stuff. So I was introduced to her through another founder, and I feel like I hit the jackpot because I feel like she is so strong where I am not strong. And I'm like, if I'm opening accounts and getting more business, I'm helping her and she's doing the same for me. So it feels like this really mutually beneficial relationship. So it's kind of like, a long way of answering your question, it's kind of a couple different streams. So I'm going to shows, opening up accounts, getting brand awareness, handing out her contact info with samples, being like, take the product home, try it. If you want to open an account, reach out to Leisha, my wholesale rep. She will set you up. But then also got the distributor selling on my behalf. And then she also has her own huge book of clients and retailers that she's been working with for years and years. So she's now sending out samples and line sheets and info about my brand to all of her catalog of retailers. So it's not just one, it's kind of a bunch at once.
And I think that's a topic that often gets overlooked when it comes to starting a business. Early days of the business, maybe you're the only person, or maybe you have, one or two other co-founders with you, but you kind of have to do everything for the business, because unless you do have a good funding round that you're looking at, unless you're coming in, putting your own pretty large amount of cash into it, you're probably trying to float by, to the best of your ability, keep costs a little bit lower. So you're probably going to do just about everything on your own. And then as you scale, exactly as you said, you found an area of the business that isn't your strong suit. So to be able to then hire someone who is really good at doing that thing, hand it off to them completely and have it be completely off your plate allows you to focus on the thing you're great at and maybe grow twice as fast.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is such like a fine line of doing that too early, but then also waiting kind of till it's like too late and you're completely overwhelmed and you're really dropping the ball. So I mean, a huge thing for me was that she's 100% commission based. So it felt like it kind of took the risk out of it, where I'm like, I'm not bringing on a really expensive monthly retainer, which I currently can't afford. But it's also showing me that she is like really driven. And so I actually am like, I'm excited to pay her commission check because I'm like, dang, like you are hustling, you earned this. And like, if that's your commission, it means that you closed this much business for me. So yeah, I feel so grateful for her. And I tell her all the time, I'm like, you're killing it. I don't know what I would do if I didn't find you. I definitely wouldn't be in like 75 retailers right now if it was just me trying to open all those doors myself.
And I'm curious, it sounds like this was a more straightforward decision because, as you said, this person is commission based. So there's a lot less risk with bringing them onto the team, starting to delegate to them. With other hires, are there any pieces of advice you could offer to listeners that might help them to assess when it makes sense to invest in some of these other hires or these other contractors? What's your take on that?
Oh, it's interesting because I still feel like I am emotionally healing from having employees. By the end of my business, I had 30 employees, and it's a lot of emotions. It's a lot of personalities. It's a lot of taxes to manage. And so I know for myself, it's actually going to be a bit of a hurdle for me to make my first actual hire because I still feel like I am healing from that. So right now, I'm really like loving, again, just the company being me, but finding contractors, people that are specialized at what they do, and knowing that like if this doesn't work out, we've already got a contract in place. I don't have to fire you or pay you severance or whatever. It's just like we both move on. So I don't actually know if I have advice for that because I haven't made my first actual hire yet. Again, like I said earlier, I'm a very open person, a very trusting person, which makes me actually, I'm not great at hiring. Because I'm like, if you smile at me and you're like kind, I'm like, great, come work for my business. And then you realize after it's like, no, a lot more needs to align than just a person being friendly. I guess a little kind of where I dipped my toe back into hiring was at Christmas. I did a 26-day outdoor Christmas market. And I was like, there's no way I can work 26 12-hour days in a row. I need to hire some seasonal staff. And I was feeling a little bit like, I don't want to hire employees. But I was like, I got to do it. So I used ChatGPT to help me write a list of interview questions and just say like, I'm a terrible interviewer. I trust everyone. Give me a list of 10 non-negotiable questions that I need an answer to that will align with my brand values, will align with what I expect from somebody, blah, blah. And then I did these interviews and I kept wanting to veer off and just chat with people. And I was like, no, I need to stick to the script. And I did. And I found 2 incredible seasonal employees. They were wonderful. And again, it was just on a contract basis. I've hired one of the girls again to help me when I have done markets where I've had multiple markets or trade shows happening at the same time. But again, I think it's just like really being aware of your weaknesses, like really being aware of your weaknesses and finding people that are the exact opposite of you. And it's going to help you grow so much faster. I think an interesting parallel is kind of like when you're growing up, when you're a kid and you get your report card and you're really bad at one subject. And oftentimes your parents or your teachers will just focus on that one subject and you need to just like work harder on this one and forgetting about the things where you naturally excel at. And I'm kind of like, I've got kids. I want them to try everything. I want them to fail. I want them to figure it out. But I'm also kind of like, as an adult, this has been my second business, me wanting to grow and scale as fast as humanly possible. I'm just owning what I suck at and being like, let's outsource that. And because if I just get to work at the stuff that I'm like naturally good at, that naturally brings me life and that gets me like stoked, I'm like, that's a dream that I can just do the things that I'm really good at and love doing and outsource the things that, make me want to rip my hair out. So
I don't know if I could have dreamed up a better way to wrap up the podcast than with what you just said right there. That was perfect. Eliza, for listeners that want to buy Lavoh or that want to just find you online on social, can you give us a couple links that we can go to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website's very simple. It's just lavoh.com. So it's LAVOH.com. I ship anywhere in North America and the UK. And also I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the social media platforms at Love Lavoh. And then also I've got my own account that's kind of linked to that. So I show a lot of on my personal account, kind of the behind the scenes, the wins, the failures, the many dropped balls when I'm trying to navigate motherhood and business at the same time. So yeah, follow along. It's just me on the other end of the account. So I always say that to customers. I'm like, if you have feedback, if you have questions, anything at all, it's me on the other end. Shoot me a message and I'm happy to chat.
Once again, listeners, Eliza Trendiak, the founder over at Lavoh. Eliza, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.